founding of Kentucky is always an interesting story with many tales of bravery, tragedy, and heartache. Many frontiersmen came to Kentucky scouting and surveying the land in preparation to bring many new settlers to the rich and fertile land. As we think about all the frontiersmen that paved the way, the question comes to me, who are the most important ones, or which ones had the most impact? Of course, this is all my opinion and my opinion only. But before we get to the top 5 list, if you haven't already, subscribe to the channel, like this video, and share it on social media to help the channel grow. Now this list, of course, is 100% just my opinion, so whoever your top 5 frontiersmen are, put them in the comments. There is no wrong answer. So let's start with my number 5 frontiersman of Kentucky. Somebody that not a lot of people know about, but Benjamin Logan. Now, he is definitely unknown. You may not even know who he is at all. But considering the other frontiersman achievements, I placed him at number 5. Now, by withholding my personal bias, I would probably put him a little bit higher, living in Lincoln County, being so close to the rich history that he has given Kentucky. But I'm withholding my bias, so he's number 5. Now, he came over on the Wilderness Road with John Floyd. He established a Fort Logan, what would become known as the Standing Fort, what would eventually become Stanford, Kentucky, which is the second oldest town in Kentucky. He built his cabin, he planted his corn, he came back a year later and started building his fort. You can see some pictures of his fort here, and that's the basis of it. He helped many settlers come back and forth. He also went to Boonesboro, to Fort Herrod. He was a big influence in early Kentucky settlement. Many Native Americans attacked Fort Logan, and sometimes they even moved from Fort Logan to Fort Boonesboro or Fort Herrod because they were bigger forts and more well protected. There was a long siege at Fort Logan as well, and that is one of the reasons it's called the Standing Fort, which is believed to be the connection to Stanford, Kentucky, the second oldest city in Kentucky. Now, the size of the fort was a bit smaller. It was half the size of Fort Herrod and Fort Boonesboro. Now, one thing that keeps Benjamin Logan separate from some of the other frontiersmen on the list, he was very involved in improving the area and creating a functional government. When Lincoln County was formed, Harrodstown was the first county seat, but Logan petitioned it to be moved to Stanford. He said he would build a jail, a tavern. Of course, those were required buildings that you had to have for a courthouse, but eventually it was moved and Stanford continued to grow. And with his interest in government and building up the land, he actually had a political career, or he had political ambitions. He was elected a number of times to representative roles and so forth, but he was heavily involved in creating the state government of Kentucky. And he even ran for governor twice. The first time in 1796, and he was beat by James Garrett, and then again in 1800, he was also beat by James Garrett. Now, was there another run for governor in Benjamin Logan's future? Possibly. But he died in 1801, so he never became governor, and that would be one thing that would be different. He would be a bit more notable person, but nobody else on this list ran for governor. Benjamin Logan was also a soldier. He fought many battles with George Rogers Clark during the American Revolution, many Native American battles as well, but overall, he was very important to the settling of Kentucky. Provided protection and helped create the government. Personally, Benjamin Logan is probably my favorite, because I've always lived so close to Stanford, and he has such a rich history connected to the area. But I'm trying not to be biased. Number 4 on my list of the top 5 Kentucky frontiersmen is George Rogers Clark. Some may not think of him as a frontiersman, and in the sense of scouting and surveying the wilderness, I give him a lot of credit for creating a path for people to move to Kentucky. And that's what happened. Most people probably only connect Clark to his military record, and that's understandable. He was a very good general, a very well-known general. He fought in many battles. But he also surveyed Leesburg, which is now part of Frankfort. He was also a delegate from Harrodsburg, which was then part of Fincastle County, Virginia. Most importantly, and it was a very big deal to Kentucky, he also settled Louisville, or what became Louisville. During a march north to battle some Native Americans, Clark set up a station at the Falls of the Ohio and called it Corn Island. An odd name, of course, but it's actually quite genius. He named it Corn Island for one reason. Corn Island sounds like a village or a station, full of settlers and so forth. However, Corn Island was actually a military outpost to help supply and continue the battle against Native Americans when needed. Over time, the people who were living on Corn Island moved over to the mainland, which would become Louisville. George Rogers Clark, his most known victory, of course, is capturing Henry Hamilton during the Revolutionary War. And on his way back, guess where he stayed? Fort Logan. Big connection to Benjamin Logan. One thing he does have that really makes him important to the settlement and the founding of Kentucky, because he was always going to Williamsburg, Virginia, and campaigning for military aid in Kentucky. If it wasn't for Clark's constant persuading, Kentucky would have been left out all alone, with no military support or no military backup. One thing also, though, is he was loved and very well respected in the state for his military career, but that concludes him. Moving on to number 3, and another frontiersman that many people he's more known for sure, but probably not as much as he should be. That's going to be James Herrod. He's the first settler of European descent to settle in Kentucky. So he has to be in the top 5. His story is very similar to the others. He came over to Kentucky, explored, he surveyed, he did all those things. But Herrod and a group of men headed down the Ohio River and then into the Kentucky River, finally settling in what is now Mercer County. They established Herrod's Town, the first town of Kentucky. They built some cabins, but then they had to abandon them and then come back later. And in 1775, they returned and began building Fort Herrod. Many settlers came to Kentucky and stopped at Fort Herrod to get more provisions, to get protection, so many things. Slowly, people began to build outside the fort and the population just grew. Some notable people. Jane Coombs, the first teacher in Kentucky, stayed at Fort Herrod. Other people came and stayed, and it was just a very important spot. You think of Boonesboro, Fort Logan, that's what these stations kind of became. These forts were just stopping points for people to stay, get protection, and then they would go farther out west. And he helped keep other posts supplied with military equipment. So again, very important to the overall continuation or strengthening of Kentucky. As Native Americans' attacks lessened, Herrod kind of settled down and became accustomed to a bit more of a relaxing life. He was a big proponent against the Transylvania colony being formed and kind of breaking away from Virginia. His biggest concern was the legal issues from land claims, the fear of not getting protection from Virginia, because if Transylvania became a colony, they have no protection of Virginia. Virginia has no reason to send their troops over to help the people in Kentucky County because it's not part of Virginia. So kind of a good thing he probably voiced his concerns. But even though at the time the Virginia government wasn't really providing much support anyway, that was a concern. One thing that I feel that holds Herrod back the most, and I believe if this wouldn't have happened, he would definitely be number 1, but kind of died early. Now, he lived a good life, a good long life, but he could have contributed more. His stepson died. A lot of other stuff happened, which you can check out a video specifically about him on this channel. But the cause of his death is still unknown. Rumors out there all over the place of what could have caused James Herrod's death. The second most important frontiersman, in my opinion, is Daniel Boone. That's right. I did not put Daniel Boone as number 1. Don't get me wrong, he was very important and his achievements should not go without mention. He's probably one of the most known frontiersmen in all of America. But he was one of the first to help create a path to Kentucky for immigrants. The Wilderness Road, he helped establish the second settlement in Kentucky, Boonesboro. Heaven must be a Kentucky kind of place. So it's safe to say Daniel Boone loved Kentucky and its rich land and its game and so forth. Boone was captured by the Shawnee and lived with them for many years. He escaped. He returned to Boonesboro in time to warn all the other settlers of the impending attack. Everyone knows about Daniel Boone, and he had a biography written about him. So why is he not number 1? Let's start with the possibility that Daniel Boone, or the legend of Daniel Boone, has blown his accomplishments up into more than what really are. Not trying to undersell anything that he's done. He's done plenty for Kentucky and the settlers that he brought. He helped bring thousands of settlers to Kentucky. But secondly, I feel Daniel Boone loved Kentucky for its land and may have not been as interested in its settlement or its establishment. He was also not interested in the government aspect of creating a new state. Although he did hold office, laws of men did not interest him. If Daniel Boone saw the smoke of someone else's chimney, he was ready to move farther away. He loved to hunt and trap and spend his time away from everyone. He was a true wilderness man. But the final reason Daniel Boone is not number 1 is because the person who I picked as the number 1 most important frontiersman of Kentucky saved Daniel Boone's life. One well-documented time, and possibly more times than that. And actually, he saved multiple people's lives, many of times. So that's why Daniel Boone is number 2, and I rank the most important frontiersman to Kentucky, in my opinion again, is Simon Kenton. Many people would say he's just the same as Daniel Boone, and in many ways he is. They both came to Kentucky with a love for the rich, fertile land and the plentiful game. They loved being outdoors. Kenton came to Kentucky, and he even stayed at Boonesboro and the other forts in the area. George Rogers Clark appointed him Spy of the Frontier. He became a well-known guide for many people seeking passage in Kentucky. He was feared by the Native Americans and was known to always have his gun loaded. He was captured by the Native Americans and forced to run the gauntlet many times. He's given credit as one of the first settlers to grow corn north of the Kentucky River. It was around the modern day of Maysville. The biggest reason I place Kenton over Boone is because Kenton saved Boone's life. During an attack by Native Americans, Boone was injured, and Simon Kenton ran to his rescue and fought off many Native Americans while carrying Boone back into the fort. Another instance, during a siege at Fort Herrod, Kenton would sneak out at night and kill deer and bring them back to the starving people inside the fort. He was able to keep many people alive through his brave actions in a terrible time. Just to put the cherry on top, Simon Kenton fought in the Battle of the Thames, and during this battle, Tecumseh was killed. And Simon Kenton, of course, had a rough relationship with Native Americans, but he respected Tecumseh to a point that when asked to identify Tecumseh's body, he identified it incorrectly in order to preserve Tecumseh's actual body. He's a bit of a man of honor as well. But people loved Simon Kenton. He was put in jail for a time because of his taxes and land claim issues, but the people were so upset that the jailer actually gave him special privileges. So here's my list one more time. Number 5, Benjamin Logan. Number 4, George Rogers Clark. Number 3, James Herrod. Number 2, Daniel Boone. And number 1, Simon Kenton. Now there's a video on our channel about each one of these people individually, so you can check out those videos if you want to learn a bit more about their lives. Now I'll argue till I'm blue in the face that all 5 of these men were instrumental in the founding and settlement of Kentucky. The order is purely my opinion, and there are many more to consider. Let me know in the comments on who you think are the top 5 frontiersmen of Kentucky. Thank you for watching, and remember, the Kentucky History Channel, telling stories about Kentucky that you won't forget. Don't forget to try out audibletrial.com/kyhistorypod to get a free book of your choosing. If you'd like to support the channel, check out our Patreon page at patreon.com/kyhistorypod. Like, subscribe, and hit the notification button for more Kentucky history content. Find us on these social media platforms and check out the Kentucky History Podcast on these podcast platforms for more in-depth history of Kentucky. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you next time.